Midnight hums like a machine trying not to wake the building. Perihelion is happening off camera, too close to the sun for anyone to watch. If the numbers bend tonight, gravity won't be the only hand on the wheel. I press rec, and the room feels 1 degree colder. The control wall is a rectangle of patient blue. Status tiles pulse without drama, time servers synced, storage mirrors green, backup fans within temperature. On the center screen, our MPC feed writes its grayscale poetry, timestamps sliding left, line by line, as if the night itself were exhaling. The live sky is blacked out by solar conjunction. The only stars I will see are in the catalog we align by hand. Roll the scripts, I say. Rolling, Ava answers from the bay behind me. Her voice is soft and exact, like a metronome. On her screen the star catalog loads, resolves, shrinks its errors by a hair. The residual plot waits, a blank grid with a crosshair where the future will decide to stand. I wear the headset like a borrowed conscience. Our astronomer in Hawaii is a steady tone pressed low. We'll push first residuals 2 hours post-perihelion. You'll see noise, then structure, if there's any. Reminder, do not name structure. Understood, I say. Legal is on, the producer says from the glass office. His reflection doesn't blink as he reads, policy reminder, no extraordinary language without 3 independent confirmations. No adjectives implying intent. No propulsion. No engineered. I keep the disclaimer on the preview monitor like a safety on a gun. We've cut adjectives before. It's the only diet that ever made a newsroom healthier. The elevator down the hall opens and stays open, someone has told it the building sleeps. The air handler's hum changes register when the exterior doors seal, a pressure you feel in your teeth. Time check, I say. 1:08 Universal Time Coordinated, Ava says. We hold the reacquisition window at 4:12 to 4:37. If we miss it, the geometry slides a day. Copy, I say. The words feel like screws turning. I draft the lower third, interstellar object near perihelion. Delete alien. Add anomalous. The cursor blinks like it's counting my courage. Out in the packet storm of the internet, other newsrooms will write the words we can't. They'll pay for it tomorrow. The first script completes with a quiet ding. Logs collated. Checksums clean. I mirror the bundle to the off-site bucket, hash the hash, and write my initials next to the string because I believe in rituals that leave marks. PDCO liaison on hold, the producer says. I tilt to see the small square of a woman's face, lit cool by whatever room she's in. She doesn't wave. Tonight we keep to numbers, she says. Explain solar conjunction in 1 line. People will hate the wait, but it's an honest wait. I write it big on a card I'll never put on air. Solar conjunction means we can't watch, we wait for the numbers to come back. Ava leans close. We're down to seconds on time servers. We're locked. She says locked like it means safe. In this room it does. The minutes become a soft discipline. I walk the loop, ingest station, graphic station, the corner with the microwave nobody admits to using. Someone ran coffee hours ago, it tastes like apology. In the corridor, a framed photo of a meteor over Nebraska reflects my face and makes it a stranger. This is the work, to be the camera when the sky refuses. We align the catalog a second time because habit is itself an instrument. Errors shrink, then jitter, then shrink again. Noise always flirts. Any word from JPL? I ask. 2 emails, the producer says without looking up. One says, stay within policy. The other says, we'll brief at 5. I think that's the same email twice. Any word from the independent list? Ava checks the chat we keep like a lucky charm, astronomers who trust each other more than press releases. They're awake, she says. They'll push quiet deltas when they can. No promises. I return to the wall. The left monitor clocks a minor drift in the room's temperature. HVAC is literal about night. I rub my forearms and think about heat as a kind of confidence. People hold it well when they're sure of the story. Prep a line for the Chiron, the producer says. Something we can live with if we have to leave it on screen for 6 hours. I type, waiting for post-conjunction data. Candidate non-gravitational signals require independent confirmation. Ava sees it over my shoulder. You just tempted fate. Fate can read. I say. She smiles without showing teeth. Fate writes residuals. We go to slates at the top of the hour. The anchor records intros that feel like walking carefully over ice that probably will hold. She is better than the words we give her. When the take light dies, she exhales and checks her hands for shaking she would never let viewers see. I step into the secondary studio we use as storage when the world is quiet. It is very quiet now. A light leak from the control room makes a pale stripe on the floor. I put my phone on the edge of a retired set and open my notes from the last time we were wrong about an extraordinary thing. The note is 1 sentence long: say less or be less. Back at my desk I erase the word signal from a line that didn't need it. I replace it with data. It's a smaller noun. It can carry weight without breaking. Ping, Ava says. I lean in. The feed sags into us. Not a view. A set of numbers that feel the way weather feels before you know why your knee hurts. First point, she says. 1 dot in the cone. Noise, likely. Log it, I say. We wait for a second like people listening to a house settling. There, she says. Second point. The dot is hardly a dot. It's a pixel that refuses to be exact. But it is not where gravity said it would be. Hawaii says, calm to the point of indifference. More. I count my own breathing because it gives my eyes something to pace themselves with. On 3, the third dot appears. 1 is nothing. 2 is temptation. 3 makes a line. Magnitude? I ask. Too early, she says. But not dust. Direction? I ask. Not sunward, she says. Not cometary. The room does the math before we do. The temperature drops inside my ribs. No claims, legal says over the line, as if she can smell the grammar we're about to choose. No claims, I echo. Ava clicks a tab and the residual plot stops looking like static and starts looking like a decision. The drift is millimeters per second. Small enough to argue with if you want to fight. Big enough to move the prediction cone if it doesn't stop. What's the floor on outgassing? I ask. Lower than this, Hawaii says. Solar radiation pressure? I try. Wrong direction, she says. The producer writes hold on his notepad before legal can say it out loud. He slides the page under glass, stagecraft for 1 viewer, me. CMS status set to hold, he says. We'll package quiet for the 4 a.m. hour. We'll not say what we cannot say. Copy, I say, though I am not the one who should be answering to that command. I open the rundown and change every instance of the word propulsion to drift. It feels like swapping a verdict for a suggestion. Ava doesn't talk. She scrolls so slowly it looks like prayer. The 4th dot seems bored with us and joins the others, a millimeter a second at a bias the physics of convenience would prefer not to see. Her hand pauses over the keyboard. Say it, I tell her. That's sustained, she says. Say less, legal says. We let 2 minutes pass without comment because sometimes silence is the only non-adjective left. The producer starts making phone calls. Our anchor warms her voice the way a violinist warms a wooden instrument, with breath. Hawaii speaks only when the numbers change, otherwise she's the clock we calibrate ourselves to. I draft a line for the anchor's copy. Residuals measure the distance between prediction and what the sky decided. I strip every other sentence of any word that sounds like belief. Do we go early? The anchor asks. Her posture is perfect even when she's sitting. If the trend holds, we're sitting on the kind of thing we usually get wrong by talking fast. We don't go early, the producer says. We go right. A badge reader in the corridor blinks green, then red. It does that sometimes when the building thinks a new day started and forgot to tell us. The tiny uncertainty of it makes the hair on my arm aware of itself. Our chat with the independent list twitches. A line from the southern hemisphere, we're awake. We'll chase your window. Keep it plain. I send back a hash of the log packet and nothing more. Transparency isn't safe. It's necessary. Legal drops a new line in the shared doc, no streaming of raw plots without context. The words feel like tape on a mouth. They're not wrong. Time to the window? I ask. 3 hours and change, Ava says. We won't see the sky. We'll only see the numbers the sky leaves behind. I write a small sentence to keep me honest. If the metric drifts tonight, the stake stops being theory. The anchor rehearses one more time, pacing the sentence where conjunction lives. We can't watch, we wait for the numbers. She makes it sound like a promise, not a failure. Update from JPL, the producer says. We all look at him as if looking could pull the email's text into the air between us. He scans, then reads. Preliminary internal consensus, possible non-gravitational acceleration consistent with sustained force. Request caution in language. 3 confirmations? Legal asks. Counting, he says. We have 1.5. I turn a page in my notebook that already knows what I want to write and don't. On the next line, who signs this? Beneath it, no one you can quote. I stand and sit and stand again. Movement is a way to show time you're not waiting on it. In the corner, the microwave clicks once to tell the building it still exists. The wall of screens glows in that blue that only belongs to nights with stakes. At 2:40, we get a call from an instrument tech we trust because he only calls when he's unhappy. Your system clock is a fraction quick, he says. Not a problem, but it's not beautiful. Align, Ava says, already aligning. I'm shutting up now, he says, and does. Hawaii's tone sounds like the color gray. Sustained trend, she says. Insufficient for claims. Sufficient for caution. The producer picks up the red phone that is not red and calls the editor, who will have to explain to the executives why our lower thirds are so careful. We don't get to be first, he says. We get to be exact. Define exact, the editor says on speaker. No propulsion, I say before legal can. No engineered. Candidate non-gravitational acceleration. Pending independent confirmation. Reacquisition window 4:12 to 4:37 Universal Time Coordinated. Do not make the window a countdown, the editor says. This is not a movie. This is a movie, Ava says under her breath, like a dare to the night. I take out the photo I keep in the back of my notebook, not because I'm sentimental, but because objects anchor better than thoughts. It's a still from an old package I wrote about, Oumuamua, a shot of the newsroom when we let ourselves say more than we could defend. My annotation on the back is one line: the sky does not owe you a headline. Ping, Ava says again, a new music in it. I lean so close our hair almost touches. The 5th dot is its own argument. The 6th refuses to break the line. The cone of uncertainty looks, suddenly, like we drew it for a different object. Direction remains not sunward, Hawaii says. If it were outgassing, the vector would play nice with sunlight. This does not play nice. What plays nice with perihelion? I ask. It is a question that isn't looking for an answer. Policy, legal says, as if that were a star we could navigate by. The anchor takes off her mic pack and sets it on the desk as carefully as you set down a glass you've chosen not to drink from. If we say candidate non-gravitational, will people hear engine? She asks. Some will, I say. Then we build sentences that don't invite that hearing, she says. It's not hope. It's a craft note. I open the CMS. I pin the segment. I set its status to hold and watch the gray tag sit next to our work like a lock on a gate that isn't meant to be ornamental. Copy the log bundle again, I tell Ava. Copying, she says. Hash it, I say. Hashed, she says. Sign it, I say. She signs with her initials and the time. The act looks like writing your name on a balloon before you let it go. The hallway is colder now. Or I am. I step out to get control of my legs and find the stairwell with the bar that tastes like 10,000 hands. Somewhere above me, a floor light flickers because ballast is not immortal. The building has its own residuals, small drifts away from perfect operation that tell you the night is alive. On my way back in, my badge blinks green, then pauses, then decides I am who I always was. The pause I will remember. At 3:31 we rehearse a version of the segment we promise not to air unless the world runs out of reasons to wait. The anchor's copy reads like a carefully folded map, every crease earned. We cannot see the object, she says. We see its effects on our predictions. When dots march the same way, models have missed a force. Good, the producer says. Again. I step into the tiny radio booth we use for voiceovers and let the door close behind me like I'm entering a clean room. I record one line in case we need it later. Perihelion is where a small push buys the most energy. I put it on the server with a label nobody but us would understand. The independent list pings, UTC OK. North array ready. Short cadence. We'll go public only on math. I answer with a thumbs up emoji because sometimes unsentimentality is a form of tenderness. 35 minutes to window, Ava says. We'll catch the first clean returns then. I rub my eyes with the heel of my hand and watch phosphenes dance like simulations that don't know they're not real. A text arrives from a contact at an observatory that does not like the press but respects logs. We're quiet, it reads. You didn't hear this from me. There is no this attached. Sometimes silence is the whole message. At 3:50, Legal types a new line into the policy doc that might as well be the night's closing argument: we do not declare intent. We document motion. The sentence sits on the screen with the gravity of a stop sign at an empty intersection. You still stop. You'd stop even if you were the only person left in the town. Ava's cursor hovers over the plot, not to touch it, just to be ready to reorganize our view if the dots decide to say something with more syllables. She has never believed in omens. She has always believed in cadence. 20 minutes, she says. We work in the quiet industry of people doing things the right way for an audience that might never know why it matters. The anchor sips water like it's a contract with her voice. The producer rearranges his pens in an order only he can see. Hawaii breathes into the mic once every 5 minutes as a proof of life. Legal closes her laptop and opens it again. She trusts nothing that leaves the room. 15, Ava says. I open a new doc and type 6 words I can live with no matter how this night ends. The monitors still glow. The room is colder. 10, Ava says. The building ticks. The vending machine in the hall chooses this moment to cool itself loudly. Someone somewhere in the city drops a bottle in a dumpster and the sound makes it into our consciousness like a meteor nobody was watching for. 5, Ava says. I take a breath and feel it stagger in my chest like a runner who sees the finish and isn't sure the body will make the math. Window in 3, she says. 2. 1. The plot waits. The feed holds its breath the way a human cannot. On the wall, the crosshair doesn't blink, it's the only thing in the room that believes in stillness. The first post-conjunction point arrives. Not much of a point. A small insistence that we are measuring something. It lands near the edge of the cone and I feel the exact weight of the word candidate. Log, Ava says. Logged, I say. A second point follows, late by a heartbeat. It doesn't jump toward our comfort. It leans away from it. If this is noise, noise has learned choreography. Direction? I ask Hawaii. Wait, she says. We wait. The third point arrives as if it were embarrassed to be seen. It stacks in the same bias we do not name. Set the lower third, the producer says. I hover over the key that will put our caution under the world. I do not press it. Not yet. The chat blinks. Southern hemisphere again, we see your drift. Faint. Consistent. Will not say intent. Then another line I am not sure I read right, keep ear on X-band during Venus night. I stare at the words until they become only shapes. Radio is not our beat tonight. But beats leak. Fourth point, Ava says. The room recalculates. The temperature finishes falling that last degree I thought I had imagined at midnight. Somewhere in the building a relay clicks, a small sound with the manners of a much bigger moment. Magnitude? I ask. On the edge, Hawaii says. Enough to move the cone if it continues. Legal leans forward even though we're on audio. You can feel posture through wires. No claims, she repeats. No claims, I say. I set the lower third. It blooms at the bottom of the test feed, white letters on blue that don't shout. Candidate non-gravitational acceleration, independent confirmation requested, reacquisition window 4:12 to 4:37 universal time coordinated. The anchor reads it under her breath as if it were a prayer in a language she never learned but believes in. We get a final ping from the independent list. We're with you to 37. There is nothing brave about the sentence. That is why it feels brave. 15 minutes left in window, Ava says. Enough, the producer says. Plenty. I open a new folder in the archive and name it with the hour and my initials. The act is slow. Deliberate. A way to show the night I know how to hold it without squeezing. Behind us, the corridor light flickers once more and then commits to steady. The vending machine sleeps. The building stops having opinions. New email, the producer says. From, a flight dynamics engineer at a place that knows what to do with perihelion. Subject line only, if the trend holds, be careful what you think it means. Read, the anchor says. That's the whole email, he says. Ava looks at me. She looks at the wall. She looks down at her hands like they belong to someone else who will have to live with them. 7 minutes, she says. When the fifth post-conjunction point lands, it lands like a footfall on old wood, careful, placed, familiar with gravity and not ruled by it. The line it extends is now a line even a politician would see. Direction? I say, because I am repeating the lines of a play we all know and cannot stop our mouths from performing. Not sunward, Hawaii says. Not cometary. Then what? The anchor asks, her voice small on purpose. Not for us to say, I answer. It is the only true thing I have left. The clock in the corner of the wall turns to 4:31. 6 minutes of window. Enough time for a mistake to not be one. Ava's headset crackles. She touches the ear cup as if adjusting touch could alter truth. Sideband message, she says. From the orbiter. Not to us. Content, the producer asks. Carrier only, she says. A line with no words. Is that real? Legal asks, as if reality required her consent. It's not ours, Ava says. But it's there. We are not hearing it. We are hearing about it. Even that is enough to change the shape of the air. I glance at the sentence I wrote at the top of the night: if the metric drifts tonight, the stake stops being theory. The ink looks heavier now. 4 minutes, Ava says. I save the log again and place it into the folder with the hour and my initials. I write the hash on paper. I slide the paper under glass next to the producer's hold in pencil. Ritual again. Proof that we were here when the sky sent homework. 3 minutes. The anchor puts her hand on the desk and leaves it there. The gesture is not dramatic. It is human. 2. On the feed, a sixth point approaches like a bird deciding on a wire. It lands where the others say it should. Patterns don't ask permission. Time, Ava says. Window closing. The numbers will continue to arrive on their schedule, honest and unsentimental. The policy will continue to sit on our shoulder and keep our verbs small. The world will wake and ask for adjectives. I look at the line at the bottom of our test feed. Candidate non-gravitational acceleration. It doesn't shake. I feel the building take a long, slow breath. Window closed, Ava says. We sit in the hum that remains when a room has done what it was built to do and has to wait for the next thing. I rename the file with the hour and my initials again, not because it needs it, but because I do. The monitors still glow. The room is colder. And on the independent list, a final line appears before the channel goes quiet: keep your schedule. Also, someone just told us to listen closer at night. When morning refuses to look like morning, we call it continuity. The monitors still glow. The room is colder. The window has closed and left a shape in the air, the way a boat leaves a trough you could ride for a while if you knew how. Roll the returns, I say. Ava nods. The software exhales a new grid. Post-conjunction points thread themselves into the plot with a patience that feels performative. 1 dot. Another. A third that stops being a coincidence. Southern Hemisphere confirms, she says. Short cadence. Plain math. PDCO, the producer asks from the glass office. Quiet. For now. Legal has a coffee she isn't drinking. Her knuckles are white on the paper cup, as if warmth were a policy she can overrule. Same guidance, she says without looking at us. Document motion. Don't declare intent. The anchor arrives with the kind of face that makes bad news want to apologize. She doesn't sit. What's the script? Numbers first, I say. Then the geometry. Then the window we used. We'll keep candidate. We'll keep independent. Any adjectives for the world, she asks. None that won't get us sued, legal says. The building groans like a ship remembering there's an ocean beneath it. On the center screen, a private channel from a northern array blinks, copying your cadence. Syncing catalogs. I send the hash of last hour's log bundle in reply and write my initials next to the new hash like a notary of air. We go live in the half hour with nothing that looks like a headline. The anchor speaks with the gravity of a librarian handing you a book that might tell you who you are, if you read every page. We cannot see the object, she says, voice low, shoulders square. We see the distance between prediction and what the sky decided. In my ear, Hawaii counts dots without counting. Trend continues, she says. Not sunward. Magnitude? I ask. Millimeters per second. Sustained. Outgassing? I say, out of a need to have asked. Wrong direction, she answers. A beat later, softer, you knew I'd say that. When we clear the hit, the producer kills the IFB and stares at the lower thirds like he can make them braver by will. I hate careful, he says. It looks like cowardice to people who don't have to keep their jobs tomorrow. Careful is how you get tomorrow, I say. Legal slides a new line across the dock, keep duration on screen. It's not a command. It's a seatbelt. Ava's chat pings, the independent list with a pinpoint sentence. We see the same bias. Not commentary. Then a second line that isn't for the public, X-band whisper over Venus night. Carrier only. The words sit there and look like they have a heartbeat. From who? The producer asks. Not our channel, Ava says. A partner's partner. And not to us. Then it doesn't exist, Legal says. It exists, Ava says, and turns the monitor away from us, not out of secrecy but to make the point that some things live better when they're not stared at. I open a pre-registered report template, the one you file when you want credit without spectacle and accountability without confession. I write the title plain, Candidate Non-Gravitational Acceleration, Post-Conjunction Reacquisition. The body is numbers and timestamps. No adjectives, only verbs that process data: acquired, fit, compared, archived. At the bottom I paste the hash string and sign with time, location, and initials. I add the phrase independent confirmation requested because asking for help is still allowed. The producer dials PDCO. A liaison answers on the first ring. She is all consonants and no weather. We're drafting an advisory, she says. Language will be constrained. How constrained, he asks. No propulsion. No engineered, she says. You know the drill. Could we say non-gravitational candidate, he asks. You already have, she says. Keep it. He mutes the line and looks to me. Timing? An hour. 2. I glance at the plot. Soon enough that we'll be reading it while we're live. The anchor leans against the desk. When it lands, do we pin it? Yes, Legal says. And we read it verbatim. Then we read it again. Slowly. Ava drags the residual plot to the left and zooms in. The drift holds its bias with the stubbornness of someone who knows you'll run out of synonyms before it runs out of seconds. Vector matches the post-perihelion profile, Hawaii says. I will not speculate. Is anyone speculating? I ask. I'm sure, she says. But not where I can hear it. We run a package of the graphics we prepared for when science refuses to be pretty, cones and crosshairs, shaded probabilities, a simple animation of dots that learn. The anchor narrates the math in sentences small enough to hold. Perihelion is where a small push buys the most energy, she says, and makes it sound like something you could tell a child without frightening them. When we clear again, the feed from a European group shows a subtler version of our trend. Different instrument, different noise, same direction. They keep their language clean. A single line floats across the bottom of their stream, residuals indicate force not in current model. They do not smile. The producer's phone buzzes twice. He reads. 2 things. JPL internal, high probability of Venus intersection in -10 days. Caution in language remains. And a note from the global desk, other outlets already headlining with destroy. Of course they are, the anchor says. She adjusts the stack of cards she never actually looks at once the camera goes live. We tell the truth we can defend. Legal folds her arms as if the room could lean on her. We keep our verbs small, she says. We keep our nouns alive. Outside the control room's glass, the newsroom is waking in waves. Screens bloom. People who hate mornings discover they have to be people. The big board pulls social metrics that look like a sky full of gnats. I turn it off. We are not here to measure buzzing. Ava's cursor stops. New point, she says. Higher certainty. Direction? I say, a liturgy now. Still not sunward, Hawaii says. Still not cometary. The producer steps into the studio and points at the floor, meaning, stand here and own this. The anchor steps into the mark and lets the camera love her. I feed her words like we're laying track in front of a moving train. We're getting additional post-conjunction data, she says. The trend holds across instruments. No claim of intent. The advisory you're hearing about online does not exist yet. When it arrives, we'll read it to you as written. Ava taps my shoulder and points at a new email on the PDCO thread. Advisory language attached. Please cite in full if used. Legal opens it like a bomb tech. The sentences are as careful as we are, which is its own kind of relief. Read it, the producer says. The anchor reads. Preliminary assessment indicates a high probability of intersection between the interstellar object designated 3I/Atlas and the orbital path of Venus in approximately 10 days. Current models suggest non-gravitational acceleration may be present. Further observations are required. Avoid extraordinary language without independent confirmation. She looks up into the middle distance that lives between a lens and a million pairs of eyes. That's the advisory, she says. That's all of it. The Chiron beneath her walks the line, high probability of Venus intersection -10 days, PDCO advisory, avoid extraordinary language. We do not put the word impact on the screen. We do not put the word destroy. Other networks will. We know this with the same certainty we know the building will vibrate when the freight elevator hits the ground floor. I hand the producer the pre-registered report we just filed. He scans the hash and nods, not because he doubts me, but because ritual makes the system feel less like a weather pattern. Target of opportunity, he asks. Writing, I say. I open the portal that exists for the kind of night we're having. The form is an argument without adjectives: instrument, window, cadence, rationale. Under rationale I write. Candidate non-gravitational acceleration detected post-conjunction, consistent across independent observations. Request rapid follow-up to constrain vector and magnitude, assess Venus geometry in T-10 days. I add, no claim of artificiality. No implication of intent. Legal peers over my shoulder. Add, consistent with, or not excluding. I add it. I hate it. I leave it. Submit, the producer says. I click. The screen stutters, then smiles the small bureaucratic smile of an accepted form. Somewhere, a person will see this and decide whether we are asking for a telescope or a seat in the back of the bus. The independent list pings again, EU confirms. Hemisphere aligns. Still plain. Then a note from a radio array, nightside pass in 3 hours. We'll keep an ear. No, I mean, we'll keep a log. The correction is a little human kindness in a room that has not made room for any today. We block the next hour like a court transcript. Half segments of data reading, half segments of what the policy allows the public to know. The anchor is unflappable. I build graphics that do not seduce. Hawaii clears her throat. We can give you a tighter figure, she says. Delta V is in the low single millimeters per second. Over 10 days, that slides the cone. Say it for air? I ask. No, she says. Say moves the cone. It's the same truth without the license. We do. The anchor repeats it like a refrain, moves the cone. In our ears, the words sound gentle. Online, the words are being melted down into weapons we didn't design. In the second hour the call from PDCO becomes a panel, the kind of careful theater bureaucracies stage when they want to look inevitable. 3 squares of faces. A background with a seal. A scroll of names that omit the people who argued hardest for the fierce language the public thinks it wants. Is the system prepared for public response? Someone asks the panel. We are prepared to tell the truth we can defend, the liaison says, borrowing our sentence and sounding better saying it. Is Venus in danger? Another voice asks. A beat. Venus is an environment, not an audience, she says. We will update when we know more. Ava grins at that despite herself. Borrow that too, she murmurs. I type it into the doc under phrases we can repeat without lying. The corridor's badge reader flashes again, green to red to green, like it's breathing. The vending machine shivers and gives no snack. The building keeps having small opinions about our big thoughts. Ava's focus sharpens. She tucks hair behind her ear that never needed tucking. New point, she says. Cleaner. The jitter's decaying. Cleaner how? I ask. Less scatter. The line tightens. I imagine the object halfway around the sun, indifferent to our verbs, thinking only in trajectories: decrease here, settle there, do not be seen, do not be misunderstood. I erase the word thinking from my internal caption and replace it with behaving. Legal would be proud. The producer gets a text from upstairs that uses the word banner and the word crisis in the same sentence, which is not how you want to spend your life. He thumbs back, we're not in the business of telling the sky what to do. The reply is a thumbs up emoji that somehow feels like handcuffs. On the independent list, a line that changes my breathing: Venus orbiter confirms narrowband carrier over nightside. No content. No telemetry. Just there. There is a pause, 2 minutes long, then a second message: could be us. Could be not us. We don't have a story, we have a tone. A tone, the anchor says when I read it to her. Like a tuning fork. We do not report tones, legal says. We report that instruments report them, I say. We do not, she says. Not now. She's right. She's right because words summon what they aren't allowed to hold. We go back to the plot. Its honesty is almost rude. The bias angle is the same song. The magnitude, a shade more assertive. The cone shifts like a decision made early and only now visible. Should we soften the line? The graphics op asks. He means, make the cone prettier. Personality sneaks into the room like a draft. No, I say. Leave the math ugly. We cut a taped explainer of solar conjunction so our audience can rage at a star instead of at us. The anchor reads it without apology. We wait for numbers, she says again, and the way she says wait feels like endurance, not failure. The PDCO advisory becomes a crawl on our stream for people who want to see the rules on loop. The producer makes me add a QR code to the bottom corner, which feels like graffiti on a courtroom door, but sometimes a crowd needs an exit they can scan. 2 more points arrive. They do not love us. They do not hate us. They honor their own continuity. All right, I say. We seed the next 24 hours. What do you want to seed? The producer asks. Windows, I say. Venus night passes. Radio ears. Infrared when the Terminator chews the limb. Plan A and Plan B. Not on air, legal warns. Not on air, I agree. On paper. And in calls. We draft the cadence: radio at 2:10, infrared at 3:05, optical fits at 4:12, another reacquisition window we won't be watching with eyes. We lay out the instruments we cannot name but can ask to wake. We assign first calls to people who answer them. The anchor walks through the orthodoxy one more time. We are using cautious language because it rescues us later, she says. We are not hiding adjectives. We are holding them. In a quiet minute, Hawaii says, for what it's worth, the line doesn't look random. For what it's worth, I say, we'll never quote that. I know, she says. Say it to yourself when you need to feel like a person. I decide not to. Feeling like a person is the luxury you lose when the world is counting days with your voice. By early afternoon, the advisory spawns knockoff graphics and righteous threads. Words like destroy and end bloom in fonts we don't use. I ignore them. The business desk begs for a segment on markets that will never happen. The politics team asks whether they can invite a senator who has never seen a residual plot to talk about space policy. The producer says no with a calm that sounds like cruelty because the right kind of no always does. Between hits, I write the call for independent confirmation that will live in the archive and the conscience of the people who can give it to us. The subject line is deliberately boring: candidate non-gravitational acceleration, request for crosscheck. The body is the map of our night. I add the lines legal will underline and keep, no claim of artificiality. No implication of intent. Numbers attached. I include a small sentence that makes me feel like someone else wrote it: if the metric holds for the next 2 windows, we are not in comet country. Ava catches it and raises an eyebrow. I cut it. I replace it with, further consistency will require model revision. It is so dry I can hear paper crack. Release the pre-register, the producer asks. Release, legal says. I hit send. The report leaves the room. For a second I imagine chasing it down a hallway like a parent chasing a bus. I don't move. The anchor finishes a segment with a calm sentence that is heavier than it looks: high probability is not certainty. 10 days is not a prophecy. We will update you when the numbers change the story. Ava whispers into her mic, they're changing it now. We all turn. On the plot, a new point appears with the confidence of something that knows it will be believed. The line tightens again. The cone shrinks. The direction refuses to pivot toward comfort. How long until Venus geometry bites, the producer asks. 10 days, I say. Give or take. And not the way headlines mean it. Give us a number, he says, because television loves a number. T-, I look at the time, do math I don't trust my mouth with. 9 days and 18 hours, I say. And a lot of windows that will look like nothing until they don't. He nods like he can sell that. He can't. He will try. In the late hour, a note lands from an engineer who writes like a person who hates writing. You're doing it right, it says. Be careful what you think this implies. Perihelion is a multiplier. Not a motive. I don't show it to legal. I keep it beside my keyboard like a cool hand. We add a small segment at the top of the hour for people who just arrived to panic. The anchor speaks to them like a doctor who refuses to be the worst thing you hear today. There is time for method, she says. We are using it. We fill the last block before the evening with the only color we're allowed: context. Venus is an acid blur with a pressure that would crush a submarine. It has no public to frighten, no stock to sell, no votes to count. Venus is an environment, the liaison said. We replay it, because clarity should get reruns. The building shifts its weight and settles. I check the calendar. I highlight the hour that will become T0 in a color I never use. The cell lights up like a threat or a promise. I allow myself to imagine a camera shot that never airs: one room, one truth, one long look. Then I turn the shot off in my head and go back to building the hours that will carry us there. Update from the orbiter, Ava says. We hold still. Stillness is a professional skill now. They heard it again, she says. Carrier. No modulation. Night side only. Source. Legal says, reflex lined with fatigue. Unknown, Ava says. But the discipline of the report says more than the reports. They're not excited. They're exact. Then we mirror them, I say. I add a line to the internal plan: keep an ear on X-band during Venus night passes. No public mention without content. I underline no public mention until the underline feels like a moat. The anchor returns from the restroom with her hair fixed the way gravity would fix it if it were kind. What did I miss? Tone, I say. Then we stay in key, she answers. The last hour drops into our timeline and locks like a cartridge. I build the end card for the night. We will update when independent confirmations change the model. It is not the sentence the world wants. It is the sentence we deserve. Ava sets alarms that will offend sleep. Hawaii gives us one last weather report for a sky that isn't weather. Trend holds. Not sunward. Not cometary. No claims. Thank you, I say. The words feel smaller than gratitude and larger than habit. We sweep the room without leaving it, cables coiled, graphics saved, copies mirrored to the off-site bucket that lives in a place we will never see. I write a note to my future self: do not fall in love with your own restraint. I close the notebook before I can decide whether that's wisdom or vanity. The anchor takes off her mic like a person removing a small pet from her shoulder. You look colder than the room, she tells me. It's the air, I say. It's the stakes, she says, and walks out in a line that makes the hall feel like a hallway in a spaceship in a movie we don't, by policy, believe in. I sit at the console and listen to the building breathe. The vending machine has achieved peace. The badge reader stays green for a whole minute, as if choosing a side. A last message arrives on the independent list before the channel goes quiet for dinner. Schedule attached. Radar window confirmed. Radio ears on nightside in 6H. Beneath it, don't call it a countdown. Call it a calendar. I pin the schedule to the top of the dock we'll live inside tomorrow. I label the hour that isn't labeled yet. T0. The cursor blinks next to it, counting a clock no one can see. Soft thunder moves through the building, elevator, air, someone closing a door far from here. The monitors glow. The room is still cold. And in the silence between pings, I hear my own voice ask a question it has no right to ask. When the line tightens again tonight, will it be the sky that changes, or the story we're brave enough to tell about it? By dusk the city stops pretending it's anything but circuitry. Our windows mirror offices across the avenue, blue squares hovering, all of us nursing the same silence. The monitors still glow. The room is still colder. We've put our restraint on record and the world has not exploded, it has gone quiet in a way that keeps your shoulders up. Inbox? I ask. Ava scans the split screen, pre-register receipt, 2 acknowledgements, 24 auto-replies from addresses that don't have names, just gatekeeping nouns. No retractions. No praise. 6 out of office from people who never leave. Silence is a kind of review, I say. She nods. And a kind of pressure. The independent list idles like a cat that looks asleep until you move. A southern station posts a small, exact line: bias persists. Not commentary. No exclamation marks. No adjectives. It's the tone you use when you're holding a candle near oxygen tanks. Legal pulls her chair closer to the table. We keep our verbs small, she says. We keep the cadence. We do not adopt anyone's adjectives, not even our own. I filed the nightly cadence, I tell her. Radio ears on Venus nightside, infrared when the Terminator shaves the limb. We won't name sources on air. Good, she says. The source should be the math. The hallway badge reader gives a single green blink and decides to be generous. In the studio, the anchor is off camera, jacket folded over a chair, sleeves rolled to her elbows like she's about to fix a sink. She recites the policy lines quietly until they sound like psalms, no extraordinary language without independent confirmation. We document motion. We avoid implication of intent. Hawaii checks in on the half hour, gray voice, clean numbers. Trend intact, she says. The cone shrank. Your word for air is tightened. Not honed, not disciplined. Tightened. Copy, I say. We'll keep it plain. Plain is an art, she says, and clicks off. Ava tilts her monitor away from reflections. Time to nightside radio window, 3 hours. Enough to tell the public nothing, legal says, and ourselves everything we're not allowed to say. We choose to breathe at the same time. It sounds like we practiced. I open a clean doc, white as a wall. Title: Working Hypotheses, Not for Air. The lines write themselves in the grammar of self-defense. If residuals continue with current vector/magnitude across multiple instruments, then model revision required, no implication of intent. If Venus nightside returns a narrowband carrier again, then instruments confirmed a tone, not a message, do not report, log internally. If polarimetry disagrees with dust, then revise away from cometary outgassing as primary cause, language, not dust-like. Ava reads over my shoulder. No adjectives, she says. I left them in my other brain, I say. She smiles without showing teeth. Keep it there. At 1:58 Universal Time Coordinated, the radio array in the desert blinks its availability, locked on. Nightside in 12. The line lands in the independent list like a pin dropped on a map you can't show anyone. We do the only thing ceremony allows, acknowledge receipt with a thumbs up and a hash. The night is a place, you check in respectfully. The producer sets his phone face down, which is how you tell a room you mean the room. We're up 2 confirmations on drift from Europe and South Africa, he says. We remain adjective-free. PDCO's second advisory, high probability remains. Monitor venues for mischaracterization of certainty. Venues, the anchor says from the doorway. We're a venue. We're an exception, legal says. The building's HVAC changes key, a lower hum that makes pens roll an inch toward the glass. I align the star chart overlay on the graphics host, not because it will air, but because the act clarifies my own head. The geometry is a discipline, nightside, then terminator, frequencies listed like a lullaby, timestamps that would make a metronome jealous. The Southern Hemisphere Observatory checks in on a separate thread we do not name in public, phase angle favorable. Pole arm calibrated. Then, minutes later, first sweep clean. Then, a pause, then, second sweep shows angle-dependent anomaly. And finally the sentence that changes the temperature of the room, polarization not consistent with dust. Ava doesn't grin. Pride would be a lie. She says, carefully, not dust-like. Write it, legal says, already writing it on a sticky note that she will later transfer to a document with the weight of a law. Not dust-like. On air, the anchor keeps the public line, different instruments see the drift. We are not claiming intent. We are not claiming propulsion. We are observing a force our current models did not include. She pronounces include like an invitation we forgot to send. The independent list, now fully awake, starts to sound like a courtroom done right, short sentences, precise exhibits, bias angle x degree. Delta V low mm/s. Persistent over hours. Not sunward. Not dust-like. Our graphics op glances up from the map of a planet we'll never walk. Do people know what polarization is? He asks. They will learn what not dust-like feels like, I say. That's enough. Hawaii returns, voice flattened by time zones. We have a colleague on a polarimeter, she says. Their phrase is, phase inconsistent with coma. English for air? I ask. Not dust-like, she says, and for once I hear fatigue behave like joy. At 2:11, the radio array sends a private line to the independent list, carrier present. Nightside. Stable. No modulation. A second station echoes, we hear it too. A third, more careful, instrument self-check passed. No internal source. Then, almost apologetically, we will not speculate. The words gather in the room like witnesses. Legal places both hands on the table, palms down, the gesture a teacher makes when a class needs the floor lowered. This is not for air. It's not for us, the anchor says, voice soft. It's for the instruments. Exactly, Legal says. And we are not instruments. Ava closes her eyes and listens to nothing the way some people listen to music, head tilted, jaw loose. When she opens them, the screens look different, as if their pixels have been dusted. Write it into the schedule, she says. We keep an ear. We do not tell anyone we have ears. I add a quiet line to the working doc: carrier, no content, reported on Venus nightside by multiple independent radio arrays. Treat as instrument-to-instrument event. Log hashes. No air mention. Hawaii's voice lowers until it has texture. I can't hear what you hear, she says. But if the carrier exists where and when you say, then someone, or something, likes the physics of darkness. Say that again, but like we won't get fired, I say. Nightside offers a cleaner link budget, she says. Put it in your head. Not your rundown. Will we ever report it? The anchor asks. When it modulates, I say. When it carries content. When it stops being a tone and becomes a message. Legal adds, or when someone with a seal says it first. We let silence be the punctuation it deserves. The radio teams do not chase drama, they check their own shadows. Self-noise nominal. Side lobe clean. Carrier persists. Their caution teaches ours. By 3 a.m., the newsroom looks like a sleeper train, a few upright figures, lights soft, the illusion of motion out the window. The graphics op naps with his forehead on his elbow and dreams in hex codes. The producer rotates pens he hasn't used in a pattern no one else can decode. The anchor murmurs polar angle values under her breath as if memorizing a poem we haven't aired. The independent list becomes a chorus with parts: optical, radio, infrared. The frequencies are no longer numbers, they're characters, each with a temperament: IR slow and honest, radio strict and private, optical stubborn as a metronome. Our job is to keep the choir on pitch without telling it what to sing. A new polarimetry file posts from the southern station, a thumbnail, then a plot that looks like a secret a child might draw when asked to tell the truth about a storm. Caption: Phase angle sweep shows deviation from dust models by n sigma. Ava inhales like the room offered her air richer than the kind we pay for. Not dust-like, she says again, like taste-testing a phrase. Which doesn't mean anything we could put on a t-shirt, I say. Good, Legal says. Physics shouldn't fit on merchandise. We move the lower third like a needle angled just so, candidate non-gravitational acceleration, independent observations align, not dust like the anchor reads it with the patience of a reader who refuses to skip footnotes. Question, the producer says from the control wall. If not dust, and not sunward, and not outgassing, what are we left with? Model revision, I say. Language revision, Legal says. Aerodynamic behavior at perihelion velocities isn't nothing, Ava offers. You can ride thin things if you're patient. You're saying aero capture, the producer says. I'm saying the corridor exists, she says. Whether anyone is in it is not our department. Put corridor in the internal plan, I tell myself. And do. Venus approach windows suggest corridor consistent with aerocapture style energy exchange. Not for air. People will ask, the anchor says. If invisible hands guide, where are the hands? Models don't care about hands, Hawaii says in our ear, startling me. Models care about forces. Keep it there. Sunrise gray climbs the east windows and finds nothing it can soften. The city wakes like a machine warming. The badge reader doesn't blink, it glows steady green as if it has finally chosen a side. The PDCO advisory number 3 arrives, more precise, not braver, high probability of intersection with Venus orbital path in -9 days. Observations indicate non-gravitational acceleration consistent across independent instruments. Avoid extraordinary interpretations. We read it verbatim. Then we read it again. Slower. The producer prints the independent schedule and pins it to the cork strip behind my chair. Radar, 18:10Z. Radio ears, night side plus 6H. IR, Terminator plus 3H. He circles the hour we are not naming on air, T0. The ink soaks deep, it looks like a bruise. We are not calling it a countdown, he says. We are calling it a calendar, I say, and the words feel like scaffolding we can climb without looking down. Ava lays out the next 72 hours in blocks: who calls whom, which windows overlap, what becomes the priority if the night refuses to cooperate. Her handwriting is exact and unhurried, each line a small contract. Across the room the anchor tapes a post-it to her monitor: we will update when numbers change the story. It's ugly handwriting. I love it. The business desk tries, again, to sneak a segment under the door about markets and doom. Legal turns them away with a sentence that lives in the bones of the night now: Venus is an environment, not an audience. The political team asks if they can book someone angry. The producer answers with a tone that would return a dog from the highway. At noon, a junior researcher who never speaks when there are elders in the room raises her hand and breaks protocol. If the carrier is nightside only, she says, can we ask whether daytime scatter kills it? Not for air. For our own sense of physics. Ava looks at her with the kind of respect that doesn't need a performance. We can ask that, she says. We can ask it by staying quiet. The researcher flushes. Thank you, she says. Later, I will see her adding the question to a private doc with a small star next to it, her first star of the night. We don't get a single big reveal. We get little taps on the shoulder from people who refuse spectacle. A mid-latitude group sends their plot with phase sweep on the x-axis, degree of polarization on the y-axis, and a line that refuses to dress like a comet. Caption: not dust-like. A second group replicates. A third pushes back, possible instrument bias, then corrects themselves 12 minutes later with the kind of humility that makes you love the species. Hawaii calls with a voice that has been awake too long. Your phrase is accurate, she says. Not dust-like. On air, you say, phase behavior inconsistent with a dust coma. If you need the one-line explanation, polarization tells us how light scatters. Tonight it isn't doing what dust would do. Our rule, legal says, is one term, one consequence. I type the consequence into the anchor's script: if polarization doesn't act like dust, the outgassing fallback gets smaller. We cut the paragraph that wanted to teach a freshman course. A better sentence replaces it: dots marching the same way means the model missed a force. The anchor reads it on air with a look that forgives us for making her build a sentence out of string and caution. We're not saying more than we can defend, she says. We are saying the force is not dust. The comments board we ignore on principle throbs like a nightclub wall. We ignore it harder. The independent list doesn't swell with opinions, it shares working notes with the intimacy of people cooking in a small kitchen. Phase angle plus XX degree was best. Recalibrated polar arm, same result. Cross-check with IR, heat signature unchanged. It's domestic, in a way. Science is a house you clean even when no one is visiting. Look, Ava says. The residual plot, which had been content to be a line, grows taut. If it were string, I'd tell you to stop pulling it or it will cut your fingers. The cone adjusts by a fraction that is not a headline but would be if you lived in our room. Magnitude? I ask. Low, sustained, Hawaii says. Still not sunward. Time to T0, the producer asks without looking at the clock. We don't say it out loud, legal says. Then think it, he replies. We do. Late afternoon, the radar facility posts a dry sentence with consequences: window confirmed for 18:10Z, geometry supports grazing pass parameterization. I write the phrase on the board and under it the English translation we're allowed to keep: there's a corridor where a small push buys a lot. We don't say aero capture. We don't say intent. We just air a short animation that shows a thin slice of atmosphere receiving a thin slice of attention. The anchor narrates it without romance. The radio arrays return to night side and, with almost no ceremony, write, "Carrier persists." No content. Someone adds an unnecessary but human coda, "Please do not call this a message." A beat later, "We are not a character in your show." "We're not," the anchor says, as if they could hear her. "We know." Ava checks the calendar that isn't a countdown. The grid is neat enough to be a kind of shelter. "We can build T0 as one room," she says. "One camera. One truth." "Don't romanticize it," Legal says. "I'm not," Ava says. "I'm storyboarding logistics." "Storyboards become romance if you hold them too long," I say. "Then we won't," she says. Hawaii's voice returns with the steadiness of a lighthouse. "I have a phrase you might like," she says. "We like nothing," I say. "Say it." "The pattern is consistent across instruments," she says. "Not compelling. Not beautiful. Consistent." "Copy," I say, "and write it in a place we won't lose." We cut a slow piece for the top of the hour, no swoops, no drums, just the residual plot as a character evolving without makeup. The anchor stands beside it like a person at a hospital bed who refuses to lie. "We will update when the numbers change the story," she says again, and I hear, for the first time, the comfort inside the sentence. Night retakes the windows. The badge reader blinks once, decides not to play its game, and settles. The vending machine does not object. In the control room, every surface keeps its cool light. The room is colder. The independent list quiets, not asleep, just breathing low. The last posts of the hour are careful and small, drift holds. Not dust-like. Carrier persists, nightside only. Then a line from a partner who never wastes a preposition, corridor still available. I set the next day's schedule. Radio at 2:10. IR at 3:05. Reacquisition at 4:12. Radar again if we earn it. I underline the block we won't name. T0. The anchor watches my pen. "One room," she says. "One truth," I answer. Without a verdict, Legal adds. Ava gathers the plotted sheets, stacks them with edges aligned, and squares them against the desk like a dealer making sure the deck behaves. She taps the stack twice. "We're ready," she says. The building makes a small, satisfied sound, a relay, a settling, a far elevator agreeing to be on our side. I reach for the light on the secondary console and stop myself. We'll need its cool glow. We'll need the cold. On the independent list, a new message lands from a group we have not heard from yet: Northern Hemisphere, good reputation, no appetite for fame, first-time confirmation on drift. Poll result, not dust-like. Nightside carrier, present. Then a second line, more naked than any we have seen tonight: we do not believe in stories. But the corridor looks like a decision. Legal inhales through her teeth. "They didn't send that to us," she says. "They sent it to the air they breathe when they forget we're listening." "We won't quote it," I say. "We won't forget it," the anchor says. Ava looks at the board and then at the clock and then at me. "We should choose the chair for T0 now," she says. "The one that doesn't squeak. The one that doesn't make a sound when you stand." "Choose it," I say. She does. She sits. She stands. The chair keeps our secret. We build the final block of the hour. No cliff. Just a breath at the edge. The anchor signs off with a sentence that doesn't close the door. High probability remains. Instruments agree. We will be here when the numbers arrive. The monitors still glow. The room is colder. I pin the schedule above the console. The paper is thin. The ink is dark. The hour we won't name looks like an open door cut into a wall we thought was load-bearing. And as the list goes quiet and the building levels its breath, a last line appears from the desert array, time-stamped, exact, almost tender, nightside carrier faded at limb. Returning at next pass. Advise you keep the room dark. The door seals with the soft click of a studio that wants to be a vault. Fluorescents stay off. Screens supply the light, blue, exact, unsentimental. Someone has taped a note beside the badge reader, keep the room dark. No one admits to writing it. The reader glows steady green, a small, obedient star. We've arranged the space the way you arrange a thought you can't drop. Producer at comms, legal at the end of the table with a pen she hasn't uncapped. The anchor stands, not seated, she said chairs make endings. Ava's at the stack, radar, infrared, radio, polarimetry, the residual plot in the center like a thin, honest road. Time? The producer asks. T-6, Ava says. Her voice is a level shelf. Radar window in place. IR staged. Radio ears on nightside. Hawaii opens on the squawk with the sound of a room far away breathing the same cold. We're here, she says. No claims. No claims, I echo. It's ceremonial now, like washing your hands before touching a fragile thing. The advisory stays pinned on the back monitor where every eye can find it and none can pretend to forget, avoid extraordinary interpretations. Beneath it, our line for air if air happens, we will update when numbers change the story. The building stills. The vending machine, a narcissus of whirs and coils, chooses silence. The studio back wall emits that light you only see on night shifts, cool, slow, like water over glass. Lock record, I say. Rec, Ava says, and the room becomes a ledger. The red dots we never show the audience bloom like patient aneurysms in the corners of our screens. T5:59. IR warms. A strip of graph paper becomes heat, then color, then humility. The Terminator eats slowly at the limb of a planet we will never stand on. Venus is a fist of acid and pressure and cloud, our instruments call it environment so we don't make it our mirror. Residuals? The producer asks. Holding, Ava says. She taps a keyboard with a pianist's economy, 3 fingers, 1 decision. The line tightens a hair, enough to make the cone redraw itself in smaller handwriting. Say, tightened if you need to, Hawaii says, voice flat as a ruler. We won't need to, I say. Not yet. Legal uncaps the pen and writes tightened on a yellow square, then pushes it face down. Insurance, she murmurs. T4:12. The radio arrays send their first line of the hour, unromantic as a brick, carrier present. Nightside. No modulation. Then, the second of the text we can't air, link budget clean. We treat it like whether you feel but don't name. The anchor reads it silently from 10 feet away, lips forming carrier then closing on no message like a prayer that ends without a verb. Not for air, legal says, automatic, and then adds, softer, but for us. Ava adds a private note to the working dock, carrier persists at limb crossing. Fades at day. Returns at night. She doesn't look at me while she types it, she knows I'll nod. T3:05. Infrared's first pass is dull on purpose. Instrumentalists rehearse caution like scales. There's a null we can trust, heat where heat should be, nothing where nothing has the right to live. The anchor steps 1 pace closer to the central screens, inhabiting the light's edges like someone learning a room's habits. Remember, legal says, not to us but to the air. 1 term, 1 consequence. Copy, I say. If polarization disagrees with dust, outgassing gets smaller. Ava whispers back, almost smiling. And if radar loves Gray's angles, we stay calm. Calm is the job, the producer says. He isn't wrong. He isn't happy, either. T2:18. The residual plot, our thin, honest road, gets a friend, an overlay of predicted corridor options, washed gray so no one mistakes an idea for a fact. We don't say arrow capture. We say grazing pass parameterization. It's uglier. It's safer. It belongs here. Vector? I ask. Not sunward, Ava says. Magnitude? Low, steady. Millimeters per second. Hawaii breathes into our ears like a tide. I hate adjectives, she says. But if you need one, call it patient. We don't, legal says. We don't need it. The anchor's eyes flick to the policy badge in the lower left of the PDCO feed, a small seal that says we own our caution. She nods once, to no one, or to the room. T1:00. Radar comes up like an old friend you still trust to tell you the truth even when you can't hear it the first time. A lattice of returns populates a screen that rewards the devout and punishes the hurried. Numbers climb like polite people taking stairs 2 at a time. Acquisition, Ava says. SNR acceptable. Geometry is what we hoped. Say, hoped, again and I'll take your keyboard, legal says without looking up. Geometry is what we planned for, Ava says, and the room forgives her. I add a timestamp to the lower third that will never air, T00:59:37. The digits look theatrical down there. They're not. They're scaffolding. The residual line stops imitating noise and starts acting like a decision. The cone shrinks another degree. The corridor line, pale as an oath, stays on the screen. We haven't earned it yet. We keep it modest. T0:14. Hawaii returns. Polar arm reports again, she says. Phase behavior inconsistent with dust. It's stronger at the last angle. Not dust-like, legal says aloud, and because she says it, the phrase becomes a rung in a ladder across a river we shouldn't be crossing in our. Put it on the internal, I tell Ava. Already done. The anchor exhales a sentence. It isn't for air. It is for us. One room, she says. One truth. T0:02. The badge reader near the door blinks once, then holds. The building settles its bones. Somewhere a relay clicks in approval. The vending machine doesn't dare. On radar, a shape not meant to be a shape emerges from clutter the way intention can pretend to be a statistic for only so long. It isn't a silhouette, it's a behavior. A smear that isn't smear-like. A thread that resists being called thread. Ava's right hand stops over the keyboard. Left hand finds the mouse. The producer leans. Legal sits straighter without moving. The anchor doesn't speak. Hawaii says nothing, but you can hear her arrange her room around this moment so it doesn't break. Call it, the producer whispers. No, legal says. Yes, Ava says. We do neither. We breathe. T0:00. Now, Ava says. The radar return climbs, pauses, shifts a feather width to the good side of our thin corridor, and does what a rumor can't, behave. The plot of speed with height stops behaving like arithmetic and starts behaving like appetite, small, specific bites out of atmosphere where the math gives you more than you pay. Grazing, Ava says, and because the word is more verb than noun, the room feels it in the ribs. Angle? I ask. Within corridor, she says. Margin thin. Thin like, the producer starts. Thin like a blade, she says, and then nods at legal, apologizing with her neck. On paper only, legal says. Infrared chimes. A line of brightness at the upper cloud deck dips a fraction across two narrow channels, not loud enough to be drama, loud enough to be physics. The polarimetry plot threads a little seam, short, tilted, exactly where the gazetteer of impossibilities said it wouldn't be. Pole seam, Hawaii says. Short. Clean. Duration? I say. Seconds, she answers, reverent as anyone will ever let herself be at time measured in breaths. On radio, the night-side carrier that had been a tone without a message thins to a wire, glisses downward like a finger across a harp, vanishes at the limb, then returns post-limb with the indecency of an admission fought and lost. Carrier faded, the array types. Carrier returned. The radar return steadies at a height that lets you borrow energy without buying into a crater. The residual line on our honest road holds the bias the way a hand holds another hand when the sidewalk ends and the field begins. Now, the producer whispers. Now, I say, and hand the anchor a line that has no spice, no story, only stance. She does not sit. She steps into frame. Darkness respects her. We are seeing a grazing pass at the upper atmosphere of Venus, she says, each word like a plate set down with care. We see a short, narrow change in specific spectral channels, consistent with an interaction at the cloud tops. Polarization shows a seam. Radar indicates a corridor. There is no evidence of impact. She meets the lens like it's a person who doesn't deserve to be lied to. We do not claim intent. We do not claim message. We observe that the pattern continues to be consistent across instruments. The producer points a finger down, a church bell for stay with it. The anchor stays. On the side screen, a private feed only we see, a shape unfolds. Not a wing. Not a sail. A mesh so thin it might be mistake if it weren't so coherent, grid over brightness, a lattice resolving and resolving until you can't call it artifact anymore without calling yourself a coward. Infrared lattice? Ava asks the air. Say, structured mesh, Hawaii murmurs. Like frost but engineered. No, erase engineered. Like frost that follows a plan. Plan is a claim, legal says. Then call it a pattern, Hawaii says. If you must call it anything at all. We do not air it. We note it. The IR channels where sulfuric haze should shout go quieter. A tiny square in the sea of acid cloud becomes a darker, gentler square, as if someone cut a window into foam. Local albedo drop, Ava says. Spectral response, narrowed. For how long? I ask. Counting, she says. The radar shows a slow turn along the corridor's spine. The return drops a whisper. The mesh, if mesh is what it is, shimmers, shifts, settles. The polar seam repeats once, shorter. The nightside carrier thickens, thins, disappears behind day. Time in contact? Hawaii asks. 59 seconds, Ava says. 61. 62. Break. The room forgets to breathe, then remembers. The anchor waits for the lie to present itself. It doesn't. What changed? The producer asks. Ava looks at the numbers the way you look at an X-ray when the shadow isn't a shadow anymore. Aerosol signature dipped. Local band cleared. Very small. Very specific. Neutralized, he says. Never on air, legal says. Not our word, I say. Not anyone's, she answers. Not tonight. The radar return thins, lifts. The corridor becomes line again, then prospect, then prediction. The residuals flatten to a slope comfortable enough for models to nap. The IR window returns to its old glare, minus a square that refuses to remember what it looked like before. Post-skim behavior? Hawaii asks. Coasting, Ava says. If that's a word I'm allowed. It is, legal says, and uncaps her pen again because this finally, is a verb that doesn't need her permission. The anchor speaks to the camera one last time in the room that has learned to hold its own breath. We saw no impact. We saw interaction at the cloud tops. We will continue to observe. She drops her eyes to the desk. It isn't a bow. It's a rest. T+00:90. Silence tells us more than anything has all night. The carrier stays quiet over day. The radar loses return as the corridor bends into geometry we cannot follow. The polar arm goes back to dustless numbers that don't interrupt dinner. Lock the log, I say. Already did, Ava says. Her fingers move like she's cooling something delicate. The producer calls PDCO. The liaison's voice is flatter than ours, which is saying something. Your language will be cautious, she says. So will ours. Drafting now, I say. We will not say, saved, or, intent, or. Good, she says. We will not, either. Legal tears the yellow square with tightened into two neat pieces, then tears each again, then stacks the quarters. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. The stack is the smile. The badge reader blips red, then green. It sounds almost like a joke the building tells you for being good. T+03:00. We build the on-air summary without headlines. The anchor stands in the same square. The lighting board remains disobedient, it will not add warmth we haven't earned. We are updating you because the numbers changed the story, she says. The interstellar object designated 3I/Atlas did not strike Venus. It traversed a corridor at the top of the atmosphere, producing short, narrow changes in specific spectral channels and a brief polarization seam. Independent instruments agree. There is no evidence of impact. She lets the last word sit. Impact has been the applause cue in other rooms. Here it's a spent match. Next steps, the producer asks quietly. Archive, legal says. Request follow-ups, Hawaii adds. Plan the morning, Ava says. I open a new file with a name that could be a stanza, T0_skim_archive_hash_UTC. I paste the log. I paste the hashes. I paste the polite lines we'll let the world read when our courage and their patience overlap in a Venn diagram that currently looks like a pinhole. On the independent list, sentences arrive with the modesty of helpers washing dishes. We saw the seam. We saw the lattice reflection. We cannot name it. We logged it. We request your logs. We share. We sign with time. The radar station posts a last small gift, grazing corridor exit nominal. Humans write nominal when we're relieved feels like too much. Ava stands in the aisle and stretches without performance. Chair didn't squeak, she says. Good pick. It's the only perfect decision we made tonight, the anchor says. Not true, legal says, and caps her pen like the period on a sentence no one will quote. I look at the square on the IR replay where the brightness fell into quiet. The small, darker square holds its shape like a guest refusing to leave without causing offense. The residual plot is calmer now, almost bored, work done, story delayed, day inevitable. The producer points at the clock. We're off in 2. Morning at 9. Different room. Windows. Windows, I echo. He hesitates. You want to say anything? It's a strange offer, from a man trained to request less, not more. I want to say nothing, I tell him. And let that be honest. He nods like a person ordering black coffee. Nothing is on the menu. We power down nothing. We dim nothing. The glow remains, the patient aquarium of cold blues and patient reds. The badge reader settles to green. The vending machine considers a hum, then declines. We print the archive receipt and pin it where the advisory used to live. The paper doesn't look proud. It looks recorded. Hawaii leaves us with a line that belongs in a chapel or a clean room. Good work, she says. Tell nobody what you think. Tell everyone what you saw. We will, the anchor answers. A last ping lands from the desert array, time-stamped like a promise. Nightside carrier returns in 6H. Then, as if the instruments could love us back if we learned their grammar, advise you keep the room dark. The producer kills the comms. Legal tucks the yellow quarters into her pocket like you keep a tooth. Ava closes the last window and lets the monitor go all the way to black, the way you let night finally be night. We stand there with the cold on our hands, listening to a quiet that didn't exist yesterday and might not tomorrow, a quiet that feels less like absence and more like a shape you could memorize if you had the time. I tape the morning schedule beside the door. The square on the IR replay still holds its new color like a word waiting for its sentence. Do we tell them about the square? The anchor asks. Not yet, I say. Ever? She asks. The badge reader clicks once, a soft mechanical throat clearing. We leave the lights off. And for the first time all night, I wonder if keeping the room dark is reporting, or the last decision we're still brave enough to make. By 7 the city trades its blue for a thin, serviceable gray. Elevators relearn their names. The badge reader glows green as if nothing last night asked it to choose sides. In the control room the screens keep their quiet aquarium light. And the square on the IR replay, small, darker, stubborn, still holds. No applause. No sirens. Just the air conditioner drawing a measured breath and letting it go. Ava's already here, hair tied back with the same elastic as last night, edges squared. The producer sets a foam cup on the desk and doesn't pretend it qualifies as coffee. Legal reads in the corner, pen uncapped like a scalpel. The anchor enters with her jacket on her arm, not her shoulders. You wear warmth after decisions, not before. Morning, she says. We answer with nods that know better than to pretend this word means what it meant yesterday. The news crawl from other channels is unhurried, like handwriting on a chalkboard, no impact detected. Atmospheric interaction possible. Instruments concur. They keep their verbs small. The temptation to call it salvation is out there, loud where loud pays. In here, language earns its chair. First order, legal says. Archive the night. Ava has already built the package, logs, timestamps, hashes, the corridor map in gray, the residual plot, the polite lines from partners who keep their seals on. She reads the file name out loud because we learned the hard way that saying a thing makes it true, T0_skim_archive_hash_UTC. Do we include the square? The producer asks, eyes on the IR replay small, quiet deviation, the one that refuses to forget itself. A figure, legal says, with legend, local albedo decrease, duration 62 seconds, instruments independent. No nouns that imply a hand. Not even ours, the anchor adds. I print the receipt and pin it where the advisory lived. The paper doesn't look proud. It looks recorded. Short headlines, human voices. By 8, the building is awake without hurry. Footsteps pass, then pass again, people remembering where their offices are. On the public radio in the lobby, a voice with morning warmth reads our line almost verbatim, we will update when the numbers change the story. She makes it sound like an oath you could teach a child. 2 interns from downstairs stand at the control room glass and don't come in. They hold styrofoam cups like proxies for bravery. One mouths thank you and is confused when I don't know why. I raise my cup back. It's an exchange of steam. In the break room, a janitor aligns chairs to the table's edge like a chorus learning how to breathe together. He looks up, finds my face from the hallway footage we never aired, and chooses a sentence that doesn't ask for my answer. My daughter watched, he says. She said you didn't scare her. That's the job, I tell him. He nods. Keep doing it. Back at the wall, the other channels lean into panel shows already itching for nouns. Lattice. Mesh. Sail. The words land and skid and try to dig in. We keep our volume down. We keep our hands still. The business desk tries again, a little softer. Can they do a minute on markets finding a floor? Legal says, we are not a floor. The political team asks for a senator with a metaphor. The producer says, not today. The world wants a crown for a king nobody met. We put our crowns away. The briefings. The PDCO call at 9 o'clock has the sound of people who slept 2 hours and chose pressed shirts anyway. Your wording is acceptable, their liaison says. We will mirror. Do you mirror? We will update when numbers change the story, or we will update when we change our minds, the anchor asks, polite as a needle. The former, the liaison says. We do not claim intent. We log independent concurrence. We defer extraordinary claims. We defer as well, legal says. Our instruments request your hashes, PDCO adds. We'll reciprocate. Sent, Ava says. The independent list shifts into a different kind of motion, less swarm, more harvest. Plot revisions arrive with corrections already attached, like letters that apologize for their own stamps. Phase sweep rechecked. Bias corrected. Seam confirmed at end seconds. Nobody writes miracle. They write nominal. You can live there. Hawaii comes on for a short debrief with the comm you use to close a gate no animal is trying to run through. We saw what you saw, she says. We will say what you said. Which is nothing we can't defend, I answer. Which is still something, she says, and lets the channel close with a small, clean click. The corridor after. By 10 the residual plot has dulled to daytime work, lines notched where last night's choices lived, then slick again, like a scar that already knows how to be skin. The corridor overlay sits on the screen in gray, still there, still a theorem, stripped of drama now that the theater has closed. Follow-ups, the producer asks. IR tonight, Ava says. Radio nightside again. Radar if they let us. She adds a silent star beside the last line, her version of a wish she won't call a wish. I look at the square on the replay where the brightness dipped and leveled and returned with a slightly different idea of itself. It's modest as a window someone cleaned while you were asleep. You'd miss it if you weren't in the room. You'd never stop seeing it if you were. The anchor sits, then stands again, like she isn't sure if the day wants her to be higher or lower. We tell them the square exists, she asks. Not yet, legal says. Ever, she asks, quiet. We'll know, I say, and don't pretend it's an answer. Outdoors. At noon the producer orders us outside. He says the word air like a prescription. We take the stairs. The sun is an honest want. It touches your face and doesn't misreport it. The street has kept none of our secrets and all of our manners. Delivery trucks pivot, bikes decide between caution and proof of life, a cloud chooses a building and rests there. On a bench a woman scrolls a story that does not belong to us and laughs. Not cruelly. As if the world remembered its small jokes. I walk without plan to the far corner of the block where the wind comes clean off the river. You can hear it through the vents of the building like a different set of lungs. To my left, a construction crane considers lifting a new floor into sky. To my right, the window we printed leans into the light. It shows me my face with the wrong color balance and the right balance of tired. The anchor stands beside me and doesn't interrupt. The city makes a sound that could be called a hush if you were sentimental. We are not sentimental. We are awake. You ever think about when we picked this job, she asks, not looking at me. Like the exact hour. What we were wearing. Whether we liked the coffee. I remember the room, I say. I remember the light, she says. We don't talk about last night or the square or the word we didn't say. She says she will call her sister and ask nothing in return. I say I will buy a plant I plan to keep alive. We both look at the river like it could carry a small decision past our building without anyone asking to see its papers. Back inside. Afternoon returns to its desk. The building swallows us like a well-meaning whale. The badge reader stays agreeably green. The vending machine hums just enough to prove it exists. The rundown is a neat page. The lead is small but exactly true, no impact. Interaction at cloud tops. Instruments concur. The middle is smaller, next windows listed. The final line is smaller still, which gives it power. We will update when numbers change the story. We keep the b-roll simple, the residual plot, the corridor in gray, a globe of Venus without any squares. The anchor rehearses nothing. Rehearsals imply performance. We do not perform. Legal drafts language for the archive release that feels like a door half open. The public can see what physics allows without handing them the lever we didn't use. Omit adjectives, she says, then laughs at herself, then crosses out omit and writes avoid like a person who trusts verbs more than she trusts orders. Ava writes partners' names on the whiteboard with a thin marker and a steady hand, leaving space between each for respect, not for doubt. The list looks like a family you didn't know you had and aren't sure you deserve. The little echoes. At 3, a community college in the Midwest emails our general inbox. We paused class to watch your update. The students asked why you said less when others said more. We told them because we want to be those people too. We don't forward it widely. We read it twice and then keep it. A tiny observatory in the Andes sends a plot we didn't expect, clean. Exact, a seam that looks like a signature your hand might have been able to write if you could be still enough. Caption, we are small but we saw it too. I type a reply and delete it 5 times, then send, we're grateful. Please include your hashes. On the independent list, someone who never writes about anything but calibration writes a sentence that feels like a door hitting a latch. We will not name it. We will repeat it. It's not poetry, but it reads like a promise. Archiving the day. Evening decides to exist again. The light in the control room returns to blue. The day shifts, heat leaves a trace on the tabletops and then loosens its grip. The square on the IR replay is still a square. It hasn't healed. It hasn't spread. It is an event that chose to remain an event. We rehearse the sign-off, which is not a performance. The anchor will stand in the same place. The producer will lower his finger the same way. Legal will hold her pen the way you hold a small, bright animal, gently, ready. Ava moves through the room like a technician tuning an instrument you can't afford to break. She prints the night plan and, without flourish, tapes it beside the morning archive, radio, nightside plus 6H. IR, Terminator plus 3H. Reacquisition, 412 to 437. Below it, in her small hand, keep the room dark. She doesn't look at me. She doesn't need to. Before the hour, the janitor returns with a cloth and moves around our equipment like a person visiting a sleeping child, careful, efficient, kind. He doesn't speak. He dusts the badge reader. It keeps its green. He leaves. The door breathes. The broadcast. We are updating because numbers changed the story, the anchor says to a lens that's held all our versions of true. 3I/Atlas did not strike Venus. Independent instruments observed a short interaction at the cloud tops, a grazing pass consistent with energy exchange at high altitude. Polarization showed a brief seam. Infrared observed a local, narrow albedo drop. Radar saw a corridor. Instruments concur. There is no evidence of impact. She stops. She leaves room. The silence plays its note. We will list upcoming observation windows, she continues, eyes steady. We will continue to report what we can defend. No claims. No crowns. Just a schedule made of doors. The producer fades on a map with polite arrows and numbers in fonts that have never screamed in their lives. He breathes out. He doesn't call that breath relief. He calls it exhale. We cut to weather. Weather behaves, for once. After. We wind down the way people close kitchens after a long night, counters wiped, burners cool, knives pointed away. The fridge of a newsroom, our servers, hums behind the wall, full of leftovers we know we'll eat. The badge reader blinks once and stops. Plant, I remind myself. Call your sister, I remind the anchor. Remember to sleep, I remind Ava. Remember to forget, Legal says, and smiles for the first time since midnight. Just the right parts. On the independent list, a last handful of lines. We see no daytime carrier. Nightside scheduled. Corridor parameters saved. Thank you for not naming it. The desert array signs off with a sentence familiar enough to be a lullaby: advise you keep the room dark. We don't ask why the advice feels bigger than its words. We know. Soft edge. Outside, the river trades light for metal. A bus kneels. A man teaches a boy to throw a ball straight and the ball decides to curve. A bicycle rings like a bell in a town with no church. On the horizon the sky keeps a seam of darker blue that looks like the place where the night will enter without asking. My phone vibrates once, a partner sending a only just-in-time reminder, nightside in 6. Another line beneath it, there is a rumor of modulation. Then, the line that rescues us from ourselves: rumors are not instruments. I put the phone face down. The room keeps its glow. We keep our hands away from adjectives. Final registry. I open the archive again, not to add, but to see the shape of it. It reads like a ledger for a quiet life: hours, numbers, doors. I add one line at the end that means nothing to anyone outside the room and everything to us, recorded for memory. I save. I print a copy and slide it into a folder with a spine that will not be famous. The anchor steps to the console and places her palm on the cool edge as if to take its pulse. The machine doesn't respond. Machines never do. That is how it tells you it's strong. Ava shuts down 2 of the secondary displays. The main wall remains. We need it's cold. Legal runs a finger along the taped schedule and smooths a corner that was never askew. The producer kills the clip bin and leaves the residual plot up as a nightlight. We stand there. 4 people, a room, a seam. Do we want it to modulate? The anchor asks, not looking at any of us. I want it to be honest, Ava says. I want us to be, Legal adds. I listen to the air conditioner draw its slow, patient breath. The sound could be wind at a great height. It could be nothing. It could be enough. I reach for the power and pause. We are not ending anything. We are letting the room hold what we cannot. We'll be here, I say. We will, the anchor answers. The lights stay off, the monitors keep their cold pull somewhere. Across a sky we learn to treat like a schedule. The night side turns its face toward us again. That we do not ask, that we record. The universe kept its seam, and I stopped asking.